Well, one of the great things about this show is, even though it's new work, there are some kind of older pieces in the show, and you kind of get a great cross-section of what Richard Jackson's art is all about. From these wall paintings, which kind of have their beginnings in 1969, all the way up to a new piece, Who Painted My Horse Yellow, which in fact comes out of an idea that Richard developed in 1978 to a brand new piece called The Shower Room, which is part of a whole series that Richard has done based on rooms. There's been the bedroom, the living room, the dining room, to this wonderful piece over here called House of Pain. So it really is kind of a great introduction to what Richard's art is all about. And one of the things Richard talks about is his work being less objects and more experiences. And I think Richard is not so much interested in the final product so much as he is in the process of how his work comes into existence. And Richard, could you talk a little bit about that philosophy? Because I think it's pretty unique to your work and to your thinking.
I guess I'm not interested in, I'm not a materialist. I guess I'm not interested in the objects themselves, but I'm more interested in the process, the thought process that goes into the work, and then the preparation to get the work organized the way I sort of imagine it, and then executing the work. And I'm really interested in the process, I'm interested in the execution, the experience of the execution, and then I'm not interested in it at all. Like this work, I don't like artwork, I don't like my own artwork, especially don't like my own artwork. When it's over, I just want to get away from it, because it doesn't give me any more sort of new information that I can learn from the process of doing it. So, and then too, I see these things as, I guess, evidence of a performance or evidence of a work that's been performed. And normally, under normal circumstances, no one's here to witness all that. That's all changed in the last, since the retrospective. All of a sudden, I have a lot of people looking over my shoulder. But the world's changed that way too. You know, like everything's being observed whether we like it or not. So I think for every person working, there's two people looking over their shoulder now, and or peeking in the window with a camera. So I don't mind it as much as I used to. But I think what it does is when people observe the execution of the piece, what it does is that it takes something away from it, because then when they come to it and haven't seen it, they don't have to use their imagination about how the work was done. So
I think that's a really important idea when thinking about Richard's work, because you encounter it kind of like a detective at a crime scene. It's like, how did this happen? Or did this really happen? Or how did these shots get on the wall, and which object, in the room made those shots on the wall? And did paint really come out of those nozzles onto the floor? And if so, how did that happen? So you as the viewer are kind of essential to kind of completing the work. It's a very Duchampian idea, right? The artwork isn't finished until the viewer actually encounters it and observes it and takes it in. So yeah, you're right. I mean, kind of drawing that curtain back and showing how the wizard is manipulating in Oz kind of ruins the whole thing, no?
I think it does, and I think too it's the big problem is when people are around. I think the other thing that happens is there's a lot of preparation and a lot of kind of fantasy about how this is all going to work, but then when you get here, like it doesn't go off that way. Like there's always a problem, or there's potentially always a problem, and there usually is always a problem. And whenever there's an audience or people around, then they start to get nervous. You know, they think, oh, this dumb jerk, you know, he can't pull it off and it won't work and he thought it would, and so on and so forth. Then they start to fidget. And the thing is that when that happens, that's when I kind of, that's a creative process. All of a sudden I have to solve a problem in a creative way because it didn't go the way I thought it would go. So I'm having fun. Like now I'm in the studio again and I have to figure this thing out another way. Everybody else is thinking there's a fixed sort of process here and it's not happening. Geez, I feel sorry for this old guy, you know. But, this one over here, the House of Pain Tea, was a pain in the butt, you know, the butt. But it, but we, you know, at midnight we pulled that one off. So, and it didn't go the way I thought it would.
Obviously, Richard, humor is a huge part of your work. I mean, you're not afraid to make fun of art, to make fun of the myth of the artist. The high-mindedness of art is something I think you have a greater reverence for. The bobblehead, I think, is a self-portrait that is kind of a spoof or send-up of the idea of the artist as this kind of mythic figure. Talk a little bit more about how you feel about art. I mean, it's
well, I like the process just fine. Well, the bobblehead is pretty fun because when you go to a baseball game in America, I don't know if it's the same here, they're all the kind of sports figures, they make bobbleheads out of it, and sports enthusiasts, you know, people that sit on the couch all week, collect them. And so I went to a baseball game and I got one, and then I decided I'd make one of myself, you know, maybe have an artist series or something. But I didn't get past myself. But then I made the bobblehead, and I had the head in my truck, and I was picking something else up from another place. And there's a truck across the way that's making a delivery at another place, and he sees the head in there in the truck, and he comes over and says, "Is that your head?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Who'd you used to play for?" So he didn't say, "Geez, that's a big bobblehead." But then, you know, the copy room is kind of my favorite piece because it's a ready-made, you know, and it refers back to Duchamp and people like that. And really, I didn't have a hand in any of it. I bought the woman at a place that makes women or men, whatever. You get a choice. And then I bought the copy machine. I put her on the copy machine, and then I had the painting made in China. So if you buy that piece, there aren't very many things in here for sale. But if you buy that piece, you get a girlfriend. You get a shredder, you get a copy machine, and you get a turner. Not bad.
You know, it's funny, Richard, you're always ahead of the curve. And I read in the Times, I think 2 days ago, that selfies, you know, are now being replaced by people taking pictures of their bottoms and sending them off on Instagram, and they're calling them buffies or something like that. So I think you're onto something here with, you know, you're riding the edge of popular culture.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's a great story behind the horse. Do you mind telling that?
Well, it's probably X-rated.
That's okay.
No, there's little children here.
Oh, they're children.
But it's basically a joke I was told, you know, when I was a little boy, like these little children here. And my father basically told me to never repeat it to my mother. And so now I'm 74 years old, I'm repeating it publicly. But anyway, it has to do with somebody in the stables trying to meet a girl, so he paints her horse yellow and so on. And I'm not going to tell you the punchline because children are here, but after the talk, you can come and ask me what the punchline is. He paints her horse yellow. She comes to the stables and said, "Can you get my horse?" He comes out of the stables, the horse is painted, And she said, "Who painted my horse yellow?" And then there's the punchline. But I mean, my daughter's here too. You know? But anyway, you can ask me, and then I'll take. You have to show me identification that you're of age, and I'll give you the answer. But yeah, so that's an old piece that I did in '78.
78, the idea for this.
What I did is I did 100 drawings. I had a show at a university in California, and I did 100 drawings, and I wasn't a teacher until I was in my 50s, and I only taught for 5 years, because I don't have a degree in anything, thankfully, because I wouldn't trade the experiences I've had for a degree. So it took a long time to get up to a point where I was asked to teach, because the academics could never figure me out. And but I did teach for 5 years, and I had some success, I think, because I had a different theory about how people learn, and I was able to try that out, and I had some good students. I don't know if it was because of me or in spite of me, but I really enjoyed it. It was like stealing money, because I've had a job since I was 9 years old, and that was by far the most enjoyable and easy job I've ever had. Not that I didn't like working, doing other things, but for 30-something years, I supported myself by working other jobs other than art. I didn't get to be an artist until the gallery picked me up in 98. So I've only been an artist a short time in the public eye. So I always had exhibitions. My work was always used in museum shows to, like when you come in, you know, like there was always a big diorama there. And then I always had exhibitions in private galleries, but never sold anything. And never kept the work. I just threw it away because, you know, why would you store this? You know, most of the time it never got put together again, and I'm not an art collector, and I kind of don't believe in contemporary art. I think that it's not contemporary if you store it and treat it like old art. You know, it's like we're living in a temporal kind of world now. Nobody has a phone that's older than a couple of years. Nobody has a computer that's older than a couple of years. Why would you keep a crappy painting around for more than 2 years? I don't get it. You know, it's not modern. Contemporary is temporal. You just have it a while, throw it away, have another one, so on. But art's so expensive that I guess you have to keep it.
But Richard, does that mean that you in essence don't believe in history?
Well,
because if you don't keep the stuff around, there's no record of what happened in the world.
Yeah, that's true. I just came from the Tate, so, you know.
Right, you're pretty glad William Blake didn't throw that stuff away.
I'm very happy about William Blake. But that was made in a different time. See, the difference is that art now, contemporary art now, is being treated like William Blake. That's the problem. That's the big problem. And it's not, look at this, how poorly made. It's just a bunch of crap. You know, to be honest, no. You take something, for instance, I get calls from these conservators asking me the dumbest questions, like, how are we going to conserve this? How are we going to keep it? Well, you're not. That's the point. You're wasting your time.
And that goes back again to this idea that your work is about the experience, less about the object.
Yeah.
You use the metaphor of the circus. Can you expand upon that circus idea?
Well, the metaphor is that
great idea.
It's like the circus comes to town, and they announce it's coming, just like my exhibitions have been announced, you know, and then people go, and they see it. Other people don't go, and they don't see it. Well, the people that went tell the people who didn't, and so then here comes this big circle. What I like is there's all this kind of talk and expansion of the circus by the people who didn't see it. And that's what art history is. I've lived a lot of art history, a lot. I was lucky. I've known some of the best artists in the world. Just lucky, honest. And the things I hear that are actually written down as art history are total bullshit. Because I've experienced it, I've seen it, and then I hear other people who haven't seen it talk about it and become experts about it. And then when I taught at the university, I realized that this bullshit was being footnoted by students. And that's art history now. It's going to take about 500 years to clear the air and just throw all the crap out. But I think the thing is, I guess it's changed, like I do enjoy seeing old works, but I just came from the Tate. I didn't enjoy seeing any abstract work at all, I have to say.
Well, which brings us to the shower room, which is in many ways your kind of ongoing battle with minimalist painting. Tell us more about that.
Well, my generation, we're the minimalists, drugs were cheap. You could stay completely stoned for $5 all weekend. And so I think...
Really?
Yeah. And somehow that had an effect. It made everybody kind of lazy, and so then they sat around and they didn't do much, but they talked a lot. Like it was kind of like the Munchies or something, and they did less and talked more. And so they made these minimalist paintings and they talked about them, and then they convinced themselves and others in the museum world that less was more. And there we get back to bullshit. It's like less isn't more is more, and that's been my thing, is to keep adding and adding and adding, and then try this and try that. And the minimalists, they just sort of paint themselves into a corner by doing less and less, and basically all they've done is stylized it, and it has a built-in beauty because it's not sloppy, and I think the art world loves not sloppy. So it's been sort of this powerful force for me, to sort of push against. I never believed that less was more, and so I'm trying to convince people of that. But I'm trying to convince people of a lot of things, but I'm not having a lot of success.
Why do you think that is?
Oh well, well, there's a whole infrastructure to supply the contrary to that, and I don't have a bad feeling about that. I think that if I didn't have something to compare myself to, then it's like pushing against something, and if it's not there, then you're just going to fall through, fall on your face. So I kind of enjoy the minimalists. I use their techniques and styles, and I copied Frank Stedelijk, I copied Kenneth Nolan.
Well, you have the red, yellow, and blue here again. The Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue?
Yeah, Who's Afraid of Red, Yellow, and Blue? Barnett Newman. Whose work I like. There's minimalism I like. I don't know why, but I do. I guess Barnett Newman, because I guess the difference is, here's the thing with Barnett Newman. Okay, it's a minimalism, and he made a minimal amount of works, realizing that it doesn't go anywhere. So, in comparison to somebody like Mark Rothko,
right,
who died in his studio, slashed his wrists, was 750 paintings in the storage racks. And I guarantee you, I'm sorry, I hate to sound like a redneck, but they all looked alike. They did. And when I read that, I wanted to slash my wrists, like 750. No wonder he killed himself. He bored himself to death. It's just like, you know, I haven't had a drink in 10 years, but just talking about it, I want to have a drink. It's just amazing to me. But that's what happens, like, you know, like if you get swallowed up and start believing the bullshit that's said about you, you know, that you're important and this is important and so on. And I think that's the trap, you know, that's the art world trap, is to believe the stories about yourself. So.
Richard, tell us a bit about some of your dream projects and the things that you're cooking up now and that you'd like to do next.
Well, I made 1,000 clocks. I don't know if, you know, I made 1,000 clocks. I made them all by hand. When I turned 50, I started this project, making 1,000 clocks, and I made every part by hand and assembled all the gears, and took 5 years to do it, and I spent my own money working in construction to do it. And so, big deal. I want to make a cuckoo clock, I want to make the world's biggest cuckoo clock. And it would be a log cabin. I went to the world's biggest now. It's in southern Germany, of course, in the Black Forest. And I took measurements. Because it's pretty cool. When you go see the world's biggest clock, you go down this road and it sort of dead ends, you know, like a T shape. And to go to the world's biggest cuckoo clock, you go to the left. To go to the right goes to this foundation where I had a show a long, long time ago, and I've got these people they've agreed to let me put it there, the world's biggest clock. So all you'd have to do is just spin the sign around, you know? And, but it would be an upside down log cabin, and I had the engineering all done and everything. It's kind of ready to go. I made a model, so on. And it would be upside down and inside out. So it would be sitting kind of like that. And then you'd walk inside and it would be a bar inside. And then on the hour, all these animals would jump out of the clock would be inside. And then when everybody's had a lot of beer and everything, these animals would jump out of the walls. So that's what I want to do. And at this point, I haven't given up, but you know, maybe time's running out on that project. I don't know.
Time's running out on the cuckoo clock.
Time's running out, period. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Back to all this preciousness about conserving art and keeping it forever and everything. Nothing is forever. Everybody in this room's not forever. Nobody's forever. Everything has a life and a death. You know, even the Mona Lisa. They've been piddling around with that for a long, long time. Eventually, they're not going to be able to fix it anymore. That's all there is to it. It's just, everything decays, everything goes away. You know, I like to say, there's a group over here working on the Mona Lisa to conserve it forever. There's a group over here working on nuclear weapons. And these groups have to get together. Because somebody's wasting their time. I can't imagine building a nuclear weapon and never using it. That doesn't make sense. And you know science, and you know politics. Doesn't look good.
So questions for Richard, please. Don't be shy.
Yeah. Any advice?
Yes.
I went to your exhibit in Ghent. It's fantastic. I have lots of questions about your art, but actually I'm curious, do you own art? And what was the last piece of art that you did buy? And do you have lots of art in your house or in
No.
None.
No, I have one thing in my house. My friends gave me works, you know. I had a Bruce Nauman for a while, and I had it pinned up in the kitchen. It turned greasy, and I threw it away. And then I had a Wayne Thiebaud, and I like these people. I like their work. Not a problem. And I gave it to somebody who I thought would enjoy it more. Klaus Oldenburg gave me a drawing one time, and I gave it away. Same reason. I just thought somebody would enjoy it more and look at it. You know, they have a different value system than I do. And then Ed Keenholz was a close friend, and he did this whole series of watercolors, and he had a rubber stamp, and he'd rubber stamp a number on it, and then whatever the number was, you had to pay that many dollars for that piece. So, you know, I thought, this is more again, you know, a lot of bullshit, you know, but he's a friend of mine. And so he said, he asked me if I wanted one. And I said, well, I don't know, you know, not my deal. But he said he kept one, he gave 2 to his wife, 3 to his son, and 4 to his daughter, and did I want 5? And I thought, whoa, for $5, I'm not going to hurt my friend's feelings, you know. So I have that, but not in a visible place where you could see it. It's kind of behind another thing he gave me. And I just don't care about it. You know, I mean, those objects don't replace my friends who died, you know, somehow. Like, it doesn't, I don't know. I'm not very good at that. I mean, everybody's welcome to buy art, especially mine, but, you know, no, I don't like art around the house. I leave it at the studio, and because I worked my whole life, I had a friend that was a plastering contractor, and we were picking up materials in the morning, and somebody said, you know, God, things are really going bad. You know, there's like up and down in the construction business, and things are really going bad. Do you worry about it? And Kevin said, no, I don't worry about it. He said, I'm too goddamn tired to worry. You know, I just go out and work really hard and then go home. And that's the way I am at the studio. When I go home, I don't think about art at all. I don't think about my art. Like here, when we had problems with this thing, I just went back to the hotel and watched CNN. Fell asleep. I didn't worry about it, you know. I don't worry about whether it's going to turn out or not. It's going to turn out because it has to turn out. It's in a public place. It's going to turn out. And if it doesn't turn out, that's information too. You know, I'll share the failures with you know, the people that come in. But nothing failed here. You haven't been fooled.
More questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know you don't think a great deal of your finished work in terms of the value or, you know, doesn't interest you. But what would you say makes a piece successful for you?
You mean, how do
you evaluate?
How do I rank these things in terms of whether they're successful or?
No, I don't mean. I just mean you obviously enjoy working, but I'm just trying to figure out if you actually get to a place with work where you go, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I like all these works. You know, I mean, I think I especially like the copy room. I don't know why. It's just, I didn't realize it, but it fits into the neighborhood so well. You know what I mean? Like, these people in this neighborhood, they probably go home and think about that kind of thing, you know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, they stand out on the corner and drink beer Friday night and then go home and... You know, but this thing turned out better than I thought. You know, Dennis likes this. I like Dennis. I don't know.
You've been a hunter all your life, and there's a lot of kind of shooting and motion in these works. And I wonder how you integrate those two sides of your life, your process of making and the process of hunting.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes my work different is that I'm different. I mean, we're all different. But what's going on in the art world now is that because I'm involved in this free school now for 9 years, where we meet in a bar twice a week, and all the students come, they sign up over the internet and everything, and then they come for 3 months, and we kind of put this school together, and they apply to it because now they're 30 years old and they're out of school, and they want to go to another school, even as loosely constructed and ridiculous as it is. But I think the thing is that with me, like when I taught at UCLA, I'd be in a room full of master's degree people and people applying for master's degrees, and they would have a master's degree discussion, and I would be in on it, and I was always put in my place in a funny way, by being kind of omitted from the conversation or whatever. And then I just kind of quietly would sit back and go, hey, while you clowns were in graduate school, I had a gold mine. I go deer hunting. I do, we can't talk about deer hunting in the art community. Finally, my art dealer here, bless his heart, got interested in hunting, and so there's somebody in the art world that I can talk to. But these experiences, that's why my art looks so kind of wacky. And then I have a lot of construction skills and things that go into, I make all this stuff myself, and that's different. But what I realized from being around the university is that when people get out of school, they're more alike than they are different. They've been in school since they were 5 years old. They get out when they're 30 because they just want to delay it as long as possible. And then they get out and they don't have a life resume. They may have a resume and they may not. And the other thing is that in America, I don't know what it's like in the rest of Europe, but in America now, young people don't have to go into the military anymore. So they don't. They let somebody else do that. The people interested in art don't drop out of art school and go in the military. They just don't do it. And I was in the military, and if I wasn't in the military, I would have been put in the military and sent to Vietnam. So that's another issue where people don't have anything to push against. They can just float. And they do, they just stay in school forever. And I feel bad for them because there are no jobs. Somehow the universities have convinced them they need this degree. It doesn't go anywhere. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taught at the university if you needed a degree. It's a funny business.
But there certainly, I think, is this creative, destructive thing going on in your work, always. And, every piece is about creation as much as it is about destruction. And, kind of following up on Hugh's question, do you think that comes out of the hunting, or is that just something that's part of your personality or the way you think about the world?
Well, I just think hunting's the same thing. You figure it all out. You have a theory about how it's going to work, and then you go out and see if it works. And I think the thing about hunting that's interesting is I can go out hunting and not have any success at all, just like my art. I can go out and not have any success at all and go back and have a wonderful, I think, wow, what a wonderful day. I'm just out in the woods and I'm out in nature, and then there's the process of trying to, first you go out and scout around, maybe spend 2 or 3 days doing that, then you figure out where, the game is, and then you go out and you're wrong. And still, it's a great experience. And that's the same with this art. I approach it the same way, I figure it all out and then I see what happens. And I'm never disappointed. The process, this is so much fun to make this stuff. And I enjoy it so much that it can't be a failure. It just won't let it be. So.
More questions?
Yeah. They say that your work is influenced by abstract expressionism. First of all, do you believe that, as you seem to have thrown away history?
No. No, I go back to what I know, and I don't believe any of that. So why? Yeah.
And if not, what are your influences, and where are you taking your inspiration from?
Jackson Pollock, you know, like I think that's where my inspiration. Originally, the way I got interested in art was, they did this documentary on Belgian television last month. They played it. It was like on a public television program. And the good news is, I saw this film like might have been even in the 1950s, when I was really young, a student. And I saw this film of Jackson Pollock making a painting outside. And the thing that's really good about it is, I related it. What I'm proud of is I related what happened in the film to this film crew, and they were filming it. And then in the end, when they put the documentary together, they showed the film and me talking about the film, and it was so accurate. I wish I was an art historian. Like, I remembered that from like 50-something years ago, and I remembered it very accurately. Like, I didn't enlarge it, I didn't diminish anything, and so I was really proud of myself, you know, because I thought, well, 74 years old, you might start to forget things or exaggerate things, you know, get up in the middle of the night, pee out the window, you know, start burying money in the yard, that kind of thing. But I'm not there yet. So, but abstract expressionism, I think there's a whole group of young people reviving all that now. We're revisiting abstract painting again and again and again. I've got one in my room in the hotel. I want to put a happy face on it. It's just a gold round thing, you know, and I guess it's in every room, and it's right over the bed. And I'm really tempted to just put a mouth and two eyes on it. But that's where abstract expressionism has gone, and minimal painting has gone. It's just like elevator music. It's in, you know, it's in hotels and bars. I don't know where it is.
More questions?
Any advice? I need advice. But the thing that's discouraging for me is I consider myself a painter, you know, because painters make their own work and so on. But whenever I'm included in anything, I mean, it has to do with sculpture, or, you know, like when I taught at the university, the painting department would let me teach in the painting department because they're afraid of me. You know, they're afraid that because painting has become synonymous with, it's like photography or ceramics. It's more of a craft than anything else, you know. But it's not really a craft because there's not very many people really good at it. You know, like I enjoy realistic painting because it has content. And then when somebody has those skills and they're intelligent, you know, like Mike Kelly or somebody or Andy Warhol, like they can draw and they can, you know, they can include content and they can illustrate it with their craft, then it's interesting. If it's just people throwing crap around, like, you know, then it should look like this. That's my idea. You know, the idea of making an abstract painting and then step back and look at it, add a little more over here, take a little off there, turn it upside down, spill coffee on it, whatever you're doing. You know, I mean, I'll bet there's 10,000 paintings that were made on the floor that a dog walked across and they left the footprints on it. I'll bet there's 10,000 paintings like that. It's over, stop it. You know, the abstract painting's done completely. And those tricky little stupid ideas don't make it better.
Yes.
It sounds, from the whole assemblage of your words, I feel like you have a terror of these sort of cul-de-sacs of experience. Minimalism or that kind of stuff. But I was wondering if you ever sort of encountered one of those recently, some sort of thing you recognize as a dead end.
Not yet. I mean, I guess the thing is that what's hard is, I guess if you don't have a style, then the whole thing's open. You know, if you have a style and somebody owns, you know, there's always that somebody would buy something and you have a style, and then you would get known for that, and then there would be a demand for more, you know, in the commercial world we live in. But if you don't have a style, then, you know, everything's open. You know, like this copy room doesn't involve paint at all. I mean, it does because somebody else did it, but you know, I think the possibilities, I don't know that they're endless, but I'm not worried. I'm not worried as I would be if I made paintings like inside the shower room, you know, not the flood of paint, but the walls. I'd be a little concerned about that. But then,
You have another question?
Another question. How interested are you in stepping out of the gallery and entering public space in relation to your practice, the process of showing your work? Are you interested in public art?
no. I mean, doing it out in a public place?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Well, you do want to crash an airplane full of
Yeah,
paint
I
into the
do
side of
want-
a
yeah.
building.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing it. You know, it depends on the situation. You know, I'd have to have control. It'd have to be something I'm interested in doing. I'm an old sort of, I guess, you know, populist kind of person. And I don't mind sharing information. You know, like BMW or Porsche. They wanted to do a commercial, you know, where it related to my work, and they wanted me to make a painting with a Porsche, you know, and I said, okay, that sounds okay. So the proposal was, I made a proposal. We'd get 2 new Porsches, and we load them up full of paint, you know, in buckets, and we radio control them and crash them into each other. And they said, not what we had in mind. And so they said, you know, what we had in mind is we'd throw paint out on the floor and well, in the end, they did that. They did it, and it appeared in all the magazines, and some poor artist, you know, probably half my age, you know, put their name on it. But that wasn't my idea. But if they let me do my idea, number one, it would have been great for me. But number two, it would have been a hell of a lot better idea than their stupid idea. I mean, that's a stupid idea, isn't it? I mean, it's like penny loafers, you know?
So
Dumb idea.
So you need to have the control.
I had no control at all. They just wanted my name on it. And the same thing, I don't know what it is with cars. Same thing, I had this, I made 3,000 paintings, and I painted them all and stacked them into a ball, like this huge ball. And I called it Big Ideas, you know. And so Ford Motors contacted me and said, can we use your painting as an image and put, we have a big idea. And so I called him up and I told him, you don't have a big idea. You have a commercial idea. This thing I made isn't worth a damn. It's different, you know. I'm not gonna associate with somebody like that, not even for money. So, but you know, if I had the opportunity to do something, I would. You know, but my work doesn't fit in. They have a program at the Getty that's kind of like wall painting, and they've never asked me. Not decorative enough. So.
Any more questions? Okay, great. Thank you
Okay.
so much for
Yeah,
coming.
thanks for coming.